I want to talk about dealing with fear for your loved ones. So for those that don't know, I've got an 11-month-old son, and being a father has introduced a plethora of new experiences for me, most of which are positive, but some are quite negative in the sense that I'm now worried and ruminating about some of the issues that could potentially happen for my son. So how do I deal with those when they pop up? So let's take, for example, worrying about him drowning. The thought popped up that he was going to drown in my mind just a couple of days ago, and it started to freak me out. And then I looked around and I had to realize, I'm like, well, I'm not at a pool, I'm not near water. This thought is sort of not really that helpful. Having this thought right now isn't that adaptive. So the first step was to recognize, well, this thought, whilst useful in the sense that it warns me and makes me aware of the pool and the dangers and that sort of stuff, in this moment, it's not that adaptive, it's not that helpful, so I was able to acknowledge it and move on. Part of my way to get through these bad thoughts, or these thoughts that I'm not wanting that much in my head, is to just accept them. It popped up. The risk of drowning is a legitimate problem. However, right now, in this moment, it's not that adaptive. I don't need to worry about it too much. And yet it's still here. So what can I do? It's like, well, I almost thank the thought. It's like, yeah, thank you, brain. Thank you, anxiety, for sharing that. I appreciate that. Next time I'm around water, I'll address it. Until that comes, though, don't need to think about this. Often that's enough. Often just acknowledging and accepting the thoughts is enough for me to be able to go, okay, I can move on from it. But sometimes the thoughts are so powerful or so strong that I can't move on from it. So when that happens, I typically think, well, it's not the thought itself that's the problem, it's my mental state. When I can't move on from a bad thought, or these sort of anxiety thoughts sort of trap me or grab onto me, or they dig in and I can't move on, I have to start improving my mental state or going through the motions of what helps me to get a better mental state. For me, that might be exercise or reading a book or going outside or something like that. For you, it might be different. It might be going for a drive or having a bath, who knows? But there are certain things that you will do that boost your mental state up. Do a few of those. Distract yourself, change the context, that sort of stuff. And I find that if there's this sort of strong anxiety feeling, I first acknowledge it, accept it. If it doesn't let go, I try and change the mental state. If it still sticks with me, then I'm starting to go, okay, there might be something more in here. What's actually happening with this thought that I can't leave it? Why is it so ingrained in me? And that's something to sort of meditate on or to look into in depth in. Why is this thought really sticking to me? And there's probably a reason. And in the past, that reason has been that there's maybe been something happening in my own childhood, or something that initially didn't seem that dangerous or that bad or that worth worrying about. But it's almost like my subconscious was trying to warn me, like, you need to actually sort of deal with this problem. If it still sticks through that whole process, I'll go and see my psychologist and talk to her about it, because by talking to a professional or even just a loved one, you're able to start sort of detaching from it and thinking about it. And I suppose the other option other than talking to someone would be to write a journal and go through some writing therapy, which I'm a massive advocate of. Just get a pen, get a piece of paper, and start writing down the fears and talking about it and talking through it. The page listens, it doesn't judge, and you can start expressing yourself. All of these processes can help me to deal with this anxiety. And like I said, changing the context. Let's say an anxious thought pops up and, for example, the pool, and I'm around water. Well, now that anxious thought is adaptive. It's actually a useful thought. If you think about it, a lot of people talk about anxiety like it's the worst thing ever. And, obviously, I can account that having anxious thoughts isn't fun, but there is an adaptive reason for them. Anxiety has kept humanity alive. What I mean by that is, in the wild, if you weren't worried about a tiger or a lion, it ate you. So in the same sense that if I wasn't worried as a father about my son drowning, my son might drown and therefore my bloodline doesn't continue, it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective that I will have some anxiety over that. So in a sense, it's almost something to be grateful for warning you about something that could happen, that could potentially impact you or your loved ones. It's about if something occurs when you're anxious and you need to address it in the moment, you actually should be thankful, because you've now potentially averted a situation. What I want to help you address, though, is if the anxiety thought isn't adaptive in that moment, or it sticks with you and it's just not conducive to continued functioning. So if it's not applying or applicable in the moment, take a step back, take a breath, acknowledge what it is, accept what you're having as that thought. If it still sticks, go through some changing of context, go for a run, do some exercise, read a book. If it still sticks, maybe try some writing therapy, maybe see a psychologist or talk to a loved one, because there are ways through this. If you got something out of this video, it would really mean the world to me if you liked it and subscribed. Thanks.